Hello and welcome, I'm JD, and today we're going to have a look at the Ocello class cruiser. So last time we had a look at this, we did a bit of speculation. Now we are actually able to confirm a few things as of devlog 26 when the OSP ships were released with a little bit more detail. So all the information that you'll see here comes from there. So if you want to go find out a little bit more about the game and what the developer thinks as they go through and implement these features, definitely go over there and check that out. So the Ocello is a predated version of the Axford heavy cruiser. About 100 years ago, it was started to be phased out for the Axford. So these ships have been mothballed and then pressed back into service for the OSP. Now, one of the defining features of this ship, and as confirmed by Mesa, the developer within the latest devlog, is that the Ocello class is going to be the only ship within the OSP that is able to use not only Alliance equipment, but also OSP equipment. And that shows it just has its roots within the Alliance, and just that the way that the OSP has developed over time, they've started to equip their own weapons that they've developed onto these ships. So the main armaments of the Ocello class is going to be 3 Class 4 mounts. So we successfully got that right in the previous video. As you can see, they're all equipped with Mark 66s. So that's the highest class size of weapons that can be placed onto the Ocello class. And the Mark 81 railgun should also be able to fit on that. That's not too different to what the Axford currently has. They've also then got 4 Class 2 mounts. So you can see on the middle of the ship, there's one mount, and then one that we assumed was a Class 3 mount, perhaps, or even another Class 4 at the rear of the ship behind the antenna tower. Is actually another Class 2. So at the top and then directly below that underneath is also another Class 2 mount. So 2 on the sides and then 2 on the rear at the top and the bottom. So you can see it maybe better from this angle. 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom at the rear, and then on the sides for 2 Class 2 mounts. The rear mount behind the antenna is probably going to be your missile or your anti-missile type of a weapon system. Just being the way that it is, it's not really going to be facing forward, and I should have covered it with the Mark 66s, but with the way that the Ocello class is structured, then you really want to just keep this ship pointing forward, and unlike the Axford, where it's got one of its weapon systems behind the bridge, you actually have all of your main weapons facing forward. So that's really where you want to keep the direction of your ship pointing, so that you can bow tank some of that damage. You can see some compartments at the very front, which I'll indicate with an arrow on the screen. You'll be able to put your modules that you don't need as much up front, and then protect all the vital things in the rear. So your Class 2 mounts will likely see missiles and point defense. The Class 2 mount behind the antenna is likely going to be for missiles, primarily either anti-missile missiles as your point defense, or you're going to have your offensive size 2s there. Just the way that they are, if they hot launch, it looks like you would absolutely be able to go up and over the bridge, or likewise potentially even come underneath if you were to be able to cold launch it. Other than that, you probably don't want to put too many other point defense turrets there, or your electronic warfare or anything like that, because the main arc's that, and we don't have an idea of traversal, but I imagine it's a limited arc, like the 2 top Class 4 mounts with the red dotted circle. It's going to be a limited traverse range there. The Class 2 on the bottom of the Ocello, on the other hand, absolutely you could use it for a variety of different things. Again, missiles would be really good. Alternatively, you could put a Class 2 mount there, and depending on the way that you're angling, if you are going to go for a more broadside approach, you're going to be able to bring a significant amount of point defense options to bear to protect your ship. We've also got 4 Class 1 mounts. So we got the Class 1 mount on the top of the bridge. You've also got one under the front. And then, like the Class 2 mounts, you'll have one on either side. So at any one point in time, you should have 3 Class 2 mounts facing either broadside, and then you should be able to have 3 Class 1 mounts doing the same thing. So lots of options for point defense configuration, also for electronic warfare and things like bullseyes to provide those locks to this. As everything's facing forward, you're going to be able to have also quite a few point defense options facing the same way. So you'll have all 4 Class 1 mounts facing forward. You'll also have at least 2 of your Class 2s, and then you'll, depending on the rear, however you configure that. So that's still a formidable amount of point defense that you can bring to bear to protect this ship. And so you might be wondering, how does this stack up against an Axford? Well, here we have one on the screen. You can see the 2 Class 4 mounts on the top and one on the bottom as a Class 5. So if you're playing a gun, a heavy cruiser that primarily has cannons or even railguns when they eventually get reworked, you really need to go broadside on. It's not as efficient to go just facing bow on. You also have 4 Class 2 mounts as well, but these are mounted on the sides. So 2 on the sides on the left, 2 on the sides on the right. And then you've got 4 Class 1 mounts as well. So 1 at the front, 2 on the top, which have always been fairly inconvenient because of the bridge and their limited arcs, and then 1 at the rear. So in terms of how that plays with the Ocello, the Class 1 mount here is effectively moved down. You've had a size 1 mount take position on the top, and then these 2 Class 2 mounts on either side have been replaced with Class 1s, and Class 2 mounts then are taking positions on the back and underneath. So the Ocello may be a little bit better in some situations, the Axford a little bit better. Like all things, it's sort of hard to do a direct, one is better than the other, because this is a game of situations as opposed to processes. If you're wondering about how they differ in stats, one thing that I'll sort of not really ever focus too much on at this phase of the game is just the fact that it needs to go through a lot of balancing. And so there's no point going too hard into looking at the different ship stats and the different points costs. That may all change in the future. But as it stands, the Ocello class has a slightly lower armor. It's 36 for the Ocello, 40 for the Axford. It's got a slightly smaller structural integrity at 6,500 opposed to 7,500 for the Axford. And it does have a larger signature size, which does make sense, as maybe the concept of the hull hasn't been refined, and it's got that big mast on the back as well, but it's really only about 1,200 meters squared. So at the size of an Axford at the moment, regardless of whatever radar type you have, it's basically going to be spotted straight away. So it's really nothing to worry about, and that sort of signature size at 1,200 is really only probably a couple hundred meters. You probably shouldn't really worry about it too much and focus more on the actual positioning of the ship. So that's it for this video. I hope this is just a short, sharp one on this one ship class. There is the second part of Devlog 26, which does have more information around the line ships, OSP specific weapons in particular, which is pretty exciting. So I will do a separate video on that, just the way time is going for me at the moment. Otherwise, you can jump across to Devlog 26, have a look at that by Eridanus Industries, the developers, and you can get that glimpse of it beforehand as well. So until next time, thank you for watching and have a good day.